Commander Jinwoo Kim pressed his face against the observation deck window of the exploration ship New Seoul. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive alien ships were appearing out of nowhere, materializing like ghosts around their small colony vessel. These weren't just big ships. They were enormous. Each one was easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir, we're picking up over 50,000 vessels on our scanners," whispered Lieutenant Minji Park, her voice barely audible. Her hands were shaking as she worked the communications console. "They're surrounding our entire solar system." The alien ships looked like they were made of living crystal, their hulls shimmering with energy shields that rippled like water. Humans had only dreamed of such technology. These beings had actually built it. Jinwoo counted the ships on his display until he gave up. There were too many, way too many. Then the communication came through. "Attention, primitive species." The voice was cold, mechanical, filtered through some kind of universal translator. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Valtorian Imperial Fleet. Your pathetic civilization ends today." Jinwoo felt his stomach drop. He'd known this day might come eventually. Every human had wondered what would happen when they finally met aliens. Now they had their answer, and it wasn't good. The alien admiral continued speaking like he was reading from a grocery list. "We have conquered 847 star systems. We have enslaved 12 different species. You will be number 13. Consider it an honor." Lieutenant Park looked up from her console, her eyes wide with terror. "Commander, they're broadcasting this message to every human settlement, every ship, every outpost. Everyone can hear this." Back on Earth, President Hyunwoo Lee sat in the emergency bunker beneath Seoul, listening to the same message. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. Everyone looked terrified, except for one person. Admiral. So-young Choi sat calmly in her chair, almost like she'd been expecting this. "Your species amuses us," Admiral Kethvar's voice echoed through the bunker. "Your ships use chemical propulsion. Chemical like children playing with fireworks. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles, rocks thrown really fast. Your defenses are metal plates welded together." Some of the officials in the bunker started whispering frantically. A few were already talking about surrender. President Lee held up his hand for silence. "We offer you the same choice we have offered every species before you," the alien continued. "Surrender now and become our slaves. Refuse and watch your worlds burn. You have exactly 72 hours to make your decision." The transmission cut off, leaving the bunker in dead silence. Commander Jinwoo stared out at the alien fleet surrounding his ship. Each vessel bristled with weapons he couldn't even understand. Energy cannons that could probably vaporize his entire ship with a single shot. Missile systems that looked like they could level cities. Defensive shields that made their hulls shimmer like soap bubbles. "What are we supposed to do against that?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. "Our best warships look like toys compared to those things." Jinwoo didn't answer because he didn't have an answer. How do you fight an enemy that's thousands of years ahead of you technologically? How do you resist an empire that's conquered almost 1,000 worlds? The alien admiral's words kept echoing in his mind. Chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, metal armor. Everything he said was true. Humanity's most advanced technology was primitive compared to what these Valtorians possessed. But there was something Admiral Kethvar didn't know. Something that none of the aliens suspected. 30 years ago, humanity had detected their first alien signal. It wasn't a friendly greeting. It was a military communication from a Valtorian scout ship, discussing how easy it would be to conquer whatever primitive species lived in this sector of space. That signal had changed everything. While the Valtorians saw fleeing human ships and panicking colonies, they missed the real truth. Humanity wasn't running in terror. They were following a plan that had been 30 years in the making. Every evacuation route had been calculated. Every ship movement had been predetermined. Every colony had received the same coded message. Protocol 7 was now active. President Lee stood up slowly in the bunker. Around him, officials were arguing about surrender terms and evacuation plans. But Admiral Choi just sat there with that same calm expression, like she knew something nobody else did. "Admiral," President Lee said quietly, "send them our response." The message was broadcast to every Valtorian ship in the system. It was short, simple, and delivered in the same calm tone the aliens had used. "Thank you for your generous offer of slavery. We respectfully decline." Admiral Kethavar's response came immediately, filled with what sounded like genuine confusion. "You refuse? Do you not understand what you're facing? We have 50,000 warships. You have nothing." "We understand perfectly," came the reply. From Earth. "See you in 72 hours. What the Valtorians didn't realize was that the real war had started decades ago, and humanity had been winning it ever since. President Hyun-Woo Lee walked into the war room with steady steps. Every screen showed the same terrifying sight: alien ships everywhere, thousands of them surrounding Earth, Mars, and every human colony. The room was filled with panicked voices and frantic typing on keyboards. "Sir, the Admiralty is recommending immediate surrender," said General Minho Bai, sweat dripping down his forehead. "We can't fight this. Look at those numbers. 50,000 ships against our entire fleet of 300 vessels." President Lee looked around the room. Everyone was scared. Everyone except Admiral Soo-Young Choi, who sat quietly in the corner, checking something on her personal tablet. She looked up and nodded once. Just once. "Tell them no," President Lee said simply. The room went dead silent. You could hear people breathing. "Sir, with respect, did you just refuse an ultimatum from an empire that's conquered almost 1,000? "Worlds?" General Bay asked, his voice cracking. "Yes, I did. Admiral Choi, please activate Protocol 7. Admiral Choi stood up and walked to the main communication console. She typed in a long code that nobody else in the room recognized. Within seconds, every human ship, station, and colony in known space received the same message. Protocol 7 is active. All units proceed to designated positions. This is not a drill. Captain Yoonji Nam was aboard the transport ship Busan when the message came through. Around her, 300 civilian passengers were crying and praying. They thought they were on an evacuation ship, fleeing from the alien invasion. They had no idea what the Busan really was. "Ma'am, Protocol 7 confirmed," said her navigation officer, Lieutenant Jae-won-oh. "All passengers are secured in the forward sections." Captain Nam walked to what looked like a storage bay in the back of the ship. To anyone watching, it appeared to be filled with emergency supplies and personal belongings from refugees. She pressed her hand against a hidden scanner, and the entire wall slid away. Inside was something that didn't belong on a civilian transport. A massive kinetic projectile, 15 meters long and made of dense tungsten alloy. It had been sitting there for 12 years, waiting for this moment. "Release the package," she ordered. The weapon ejected silently into space. No engines, no guidance systems, nothing the aliens could detect. Just a chunk of metal moving at 12% the speed of light, aimed at a specific point in space where intelligence said the Valtorian homeworld would be in exactly 4 months. Across human space, hundreds of similar refugee ships were doing the exact same thing. Admiral Kethavar watched the human evacuation from his flagship with amusement. Their primitive ships were scattering like insects, abandoning colonies and fleeing in all directions. It was exactly what he'd expected from such a backward species. "Should we pursue them, sir?" asked his tactical officer. "Let them run," Kethavar replied with a laugh. "Where can they go? We control this entire sector of space. We'll hunt them down later after we've secured their homeworld." What Admiral Kethavar didn't understand was that humans had been studying the Valtorian Empire for 30 years. Every ship movement, every patrol route, every defensive position had been mapped and analyzed. Humanity knew exactly where every important Valtorian installation was located. Dr. Ji-ho Kang had been living on the Valtorian capital world for 18 years. To everyone around him, he was just another conquered alien, working as a xenobiologist in the Imperial Science Division. His colleagues thought he was studying human biology to help the Empire understand their new subjects. In reality, he'd been mapping every orbital defense platform, every government building, every military installation on the planet. When Protocol 7 activated, Dr. Kang calmly walked to his laboratory and sent a single coded message to a relay station 40 light-years away. Package delivery confirmed for Target Alpha. Transit time 4 months, 2 days, 6 hours. Commander. Jinwoo Kim received new orders on his ship near Kepler 442. Instead of fleeing like the aliens expected, he was to proceed to a specific coordinate in deep space and wait. When he arrived, he found 12 other human ships already there. "This is Captain Yuna Shin of the research vessel Mokpo," came a transmission. "Welcome to the party, Commander Kim." "What exactly are we doing out here?" Jinwoo asked. "We're about to show these aliens what human patience looks like," Captain Shin replied. "See that cargo container floating between our ships? It's been drifting toward the Valtorian fleet staging area for 8 years. Should arrive in about 6 hours. Jinwoo looked at his scanner. The container was invisible to most detection systems. Just another piece of space junk. But his instruments showed it contained enough antimatter to vaporize a small moon. Lieutenant Minji Park was monitoring communications when something strange started happening. Reports were coming in from across human space. Ships that had appeared to be fleeing were actually moving into carefully planned positions. Colonies that seemed abandoned were revealing hidden weapon installations. "Commander," she said slowly, "I don't think we're evacuating. I think we're surrounding them." Back on Earth, President Lee watched the tactical display as every piece moved into position. 30 years of planning, 30 years of preparation, all coming together in a single coordinated movement. "How long have we been ready for this?" General Bay asked quietly. Admiral Choi looked up from her tablet. "Since the day we intercepted their first signal, discussing how easy it would be to conquer us. Turns out, underestimating humans is a really bad idea. The Valtorians thought they were watching a panicked evacuation. What they were actually seeing was the most patient military operation in galactic history beginning to unfold." The Battle of Earth began at exactly 0800 hours, Universal Standard Time. Admiral Kethvar watched from his flagship as thousands of Valtorian vessels moved into attack formation. Their plasma cannons charged with deadly energy, creating a light show that could be seen from Mars. "Begin the assault," he commanded with satisfaction. "Show the galaxy what happens when primitives refuse imperial mercy." The first wave of Valtorian fighters screamed toward Earth's orbital defenses. Human space stations opened fire with their kinetic weapons, sending streams of metal projectiles into space. For a few minutes, it looked like Earth might actually put up a fight. Then, the Valtorian energy shields activated. The human projectiles bounced off the alien shields like raindrops hitting a window. Meanwhile, Valtorian plasma beams cut through human defenses like a hot knife through butter. Space Station Alpha, humanity's pride and joy, exploded in a brilliant fireball. The lunar defense platforms lasted only minutes longer. Commander Jinwoo Kim watched helplessly from his position in deep space as Earth's defenses crumbled. On his communication screen, he could see human ships exploding one after another. The orbital shipyards that had taken decades to build were vaporized in seconds. "Sir, we're receiving evacuation signals from the surface," reported Lieutenant Minji Park, tears streaming down her face. "They're asking for immediate extraction." Jinwoo clenched his fists. Every instinct told him to rush back and help, but his orders were clear. Stay in position, wait for the signal, trust the plan. The battle was completely one-sided. Human destroyers, humanity's most powerful warships, were being swatted out of space like flies. The Valtorian cruisers didn't even slow down as they tore through Earth's fleet. Their weapons were so advanced that most human ships were destroyed before they could even return fire. Admiral Kethvar smiled as he watched the slaughter. "Record everything," he told his communications officer. "I want the entire galaxy to witness the fate of those who defy the Empire." Within 4 hours it was over. Earth's orbital defenses were gone. The lunar colonies had gone silent. Every human military installation in the solar system had been reduced to glowing debris. The blue and green planet hung in space, defenseless and alone. "Broadcast our victory to all Imperial worlds," Admiral Kethvar ordered. "Let them see how easily we crushed these upstart humans." The transmission went out immediately. Across the Valtorian Empire, billions of aliens watched footage of the battle. Human ships exploding, human stations burning. The mighty Valtorian fleet floating victoriously above the conquered Earth. The celebration lasted exactly 12 minutes. Major Dong-Yun was monitoring the battle from a hidden observation post beyond Pluto when the first report started. Coming in, he'd been stationed there for 3 years, watching and waiting with a small team of intelligence officers. "Sir, we're getting strange signals from Imperial space," reported Sergeant Taehyun Park. "Multiple worlds have gone silent simultaneously." Major Yun checked his chronometer. Right on schedule. The reports flooded Admiral Kethvar's flagship all at once. Valtoria Prime, the imperial capital, had stopped responding to communications. The massive industrial world of Kethmor was dark. The fortress system of Gorlak, with its supposedly impenetrable defenses, was sending out automated distress signals. "What do you mean they're not responding?" Admiral Kethvar demanded, his victory celebration forgotten. "Run diagnostics on the communication array." "Sir, the equipment is functioning perfectly," his communications officer replied nervously. "The worlds just aren't there anymore." More reports kept coming. 47 core worlds of the Valtorian Empire had gone completely silent within a 6-hour window. Orbital installations destroyed, defense fleets vaporized. Entire civilizations wiped out without sending so much as a distress call. Captain Yuna Shin had been waiting in deep space for this moment. Her ship, the research vessel Mokpo, had been drifting in the darkness for 2 months, monitoring long-range sensors. When the kinetic kill vehicles finally reached their targets, she watched the energy signatures bloom across her display like deadly flowers. "Beautiful," she whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." Each projectile had been launched years ago, when humanity first detected Valtorian signals. They were simple chunks of dense metal, accelerated to incredible speeds by humanity's most powerful magnetic launchers. No engines, no guidance systems, nothing the aliens could detect until it was far too late. The math had been perfect. Every major Valtorian world had been targeted based on their predicted orbital positions. The projectiles had traveled for years through empty space, timed to arrive at the exact moment when the Empire would be celebrating their victory over Earth. Dr. Jiho Kang felt the ground shake beneath his feet as the kinetic projectile struck. Valtoria Prime's primary orbital station. The impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, vaporizing the installation instantly. Around him, Valtorian civilians ran screaming through the streets as debris rained from the sky. He calmly walked to his communication device and sent a single message. "Target Alpha eliminated. Proceeding to extraction point." Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The map that had shown a vast, powerful empire just hours ago was now filled with red marks indicating destroyed worlds. His fleet had won a complete victory over Earth, but while they were fighting, someone had systematically destroyed the heart of his civilization. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "How could primitives with chemical rockets destroy our core worlds?" His science officer looked up from her console, her face pale with shock. "Sir, preliminary analysis suggests kinetic impactors traveling at approximately 12% light speed. Based on trajectory calculations, these weapons were launched between 15 and 20 years ago." The truth hit Admiral Kethvar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just refused surrender and fought bravely. They had turned their entire species into a weapon pointed at the Empire's heart, and they had pulled the trigger decades before the war even started. While he had been celebrating humanity's destruction, humanity had been methodically destroying everything he held dear. The Empire had won the battle, but they were already losing a war they didn't even know they were fighting. 6 months after what the Valtorians still called their great victory, Admiral Kethvar sat in his command chair, staring at a tactical display that showed his worst nightmare. Of the 50,000 warships that had conquered Earth, only 2,800 remained operational. The rest were gone, not destroyed in battle, not lost to engine failure, simply gone as if they had never existed. "Sir, we've lost contact with Patrol Group 7, reported his trembling communications officer. "Same as the others. No distress. Signal, no warning, no trace." Admiral Kethvar rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing. Human faces. Calm, patient human faces watching him from the shadows. "Where were they patrolling?" he asked. "The Helix Nebula mining station, sir. 17 ships including 2 heavy cruisers. Another patrol group vanished without a trace. It was happening every few days now. Valtorian ships would arrive at a location, check in as normal, and then simply disappear. Sometimes they found wreckage. Sometimes they found nothing at all. Captain Seung-ho Park crouched in the maintenance tunnel beneath mining station Delta 7, listening to alien footsteps above his head. He'd been living in these tunnels for 3 weeks, ever since his team had eliminated the station's security forces. The Valtorians still thought the station was operating normally. They had no idea that humans were now running the entire operation. Phase 1 complete, he whispered into his communicator. Mining. Laser is now under our control. Understood, Captain, came the reply from Commander Yejin Song, who was coordinating similar operations across 12 different systems. Proceed to Phase 2. Captain Park smiled grimly. Phase 2 was his favorite part. The mining laser that had been cutting asteroids for the past decade was about to serve a very different purpose. In exactly 4 hours, when the Valtorian patrol fleet arrived for their routine inspection, they would find a very unpleasant surprise waiting for them. Dr. Jiho Kang walked through the corridors of the Valtorian Science Institute like he owned the place. In a way, he did. For 18 years, he'd been slowly taking control of the facility's research projects. His alien colleagues trusted him completely. They had no idea that their respected xenobiologist had been systematically mapping every weakness in Valtorian technology. Dr. Kang called his research partner, a tall, blue-skinned Valtorian named Veltar. The High Command is requesting our latest biological analysis of human prisoners. Of course, Dr. Kang replied smoothly. I'll have the report ready within the hour. What Veltar didn't know was that there were no human prisoners. The biological samples Dr. Kang had been studying for years were actually genetic material from Valtorian corpses. He'd been learning everything there was to know about alien physiology, mapping their nervous systems, identifying their vulnerabilities. The report he would submit would contain detailed information about human biology, all of it completely false. All of it designed to make the Valtorians underestimate human capabilities even more than they already did. Engineer Yuna Shin stood in the control room of orbital platform Gamma 9, surrounded by confused Valtorian technicians. They thought she was there to help repair their communication array. They were right in a way. She was going to repair it, just not the way they expected. The problem appears to be in the primary relay system, she told the lead engineer, a squat, 4-armed alien named Gorthak. I'll need access to the core processing unit. Certainly, Engineer Shin, Gorthak replied. Your expertise in communication systems is well known throughout the sector. It should be. Yuna had spent 15 years building that reputation, slowly, becoming the Empire's most trusted human technical expert. Every platform she repaired worked perfectly afterward. What the aliens didn't realize was that each repair included a small modification, a hidden subroutine, a backdoor that could be activated remotely. As she worked on the communication array, Yuna smiled to herself. In 6 hours, every platform she'd ever repaired would simultaneously broadcast the same message across the Empire. A message that would let every remaining Valtorian know exactly how thoroughly they'd been infiltrated. Lieutenant Colonel Minjae Huang emerged from the asteroid where his team had been hiding for 2 years. The rock looked completely natural from the outside, but inside it was a fully equipped military base. Around him, 49 other humans were suiting up for their mission. Remember, this isn't about revenge, he told his team. This is about efficiency. We hit the supply depot, extract the intelligence data, and eliminate their ability to coordinate fleet movements in this sector. In and out, no witnesses. The supply depot they were targeting served over 200 Valtorian ships. It was heavily defended, with automated weapon systems and a garrison of elite Imperial Marines. Under normal circumstances, 50 humans wouldn't stand a chance against such a facility. But these weren't normal circumstances. Lieutenant Colonel Huang's team had been studying this depot for 2 years. They knew every guard rotation, every security protocol, every weakness in the defensive grid. More importantly, they knew that the depot's chief security officer was actually Lieutenant Su Jin Ryu, who had been undercover for 6 years. Admiral Kethavar received the report, while his flagship was hiding in the outer rim of a dead solar system. His intelligence officer, one of the few competent subordinates he had left, delivered the news with a shaking voice. "Sir, we've confirmed human presence on over 300 Imperial installations. They're not just attacking us. They're everywhere." "They've been everywhere for years. How is that possible?" Admiral Kethavar demanded. "We conquered them. We destroyed their homeworld." "Sir, that appears to have been their plan all along. Our xenopsychology department has been analyzing human behavior patterns. They're not like other species we've conquered. They don't think in terms of immediate victory or defeat. They think in terms of generations." The intelligence officer pulled up a holographic display showing human infiltration patterns across the Empire. Red dots marked confirmed human agents. Yellow dots marked suspected infiltration sites. Blue dots marked installations that had been destroyed by internal sabotage. The entire map was covered in colored dots. "They've been at war with us since before we even knew they existed," the officer continued. "Every human we thought was a refugee, every scientist we thought was cooperative, every engineer we trusted with our technology, they were all soldiers in a war we didn't even realize was happening." Admiral Kethavar stared at the display in horrified fascination. The humans hadn't just defeated the Valtorian Empire. They had systematically infected it like a virus, spreading through every system, learning every secret, preparing for a moment that had always been inevitable. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving a transmission. On all Imperial frequencies, it's from the humans." The message was simple, delivered in the same calm tone they had used to refuse surrender 6 months ago. "You declared war on us. Now you get to learn what war actually means." Admiral Kethavar's hands shook as he stared at the holographic display, showing what remained of the once mighty Valtorian Empire. Red marks covered the map like a disease, each one representing a world that had gone silent. Out of 847 conquered systems, only 32 were still responding to communications. His flagship, the Eternal Glory, drifted in the darkness between stars with just 43 other vessels. These were the last survivors of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Around him, his bridge crew worked in terrified silence, afraid that speaking too loudly might somehow attract the attention of the humans who had been hunting them for months. "Sir," whispered his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Kethmore system. It's Captain Dealish." Admiral Kethavar felt a spark of hope. Captain Dealish commanded one of their last remaining battle groups, 15 ships protecting a refugee convoy, trying to reach the outer rim. If anyone could survive the human onslaught, it would be him. "Put him through," Kethavar ordered. The hologram flickered to life, showing Captain Dealish's bridge, but something was wrong. The captain sat perfectly still in his command chair, his eyes wide with terror. Behind him, his crew was frozen in place like statues. "Admiral," Captain Dealish said in a hollow voice, "they're here. They've been here. So the whole time. My chief engineer is human. My navigation officer is human. Half my crew has been human for years, and I never knew." The transmission cut to static. Captain Suyong Choi stood in the command center of the human resistance, watching the final phase of their 30-year plan unfold. Around her, dozens of screens showed the locations of every remaining Valtorian ship, every refugee convoy, every hidden base. The aliens thought they were hiding in the darkness of space, but humanity had eyes everywhere. "Ma'am, we've confirmed the elimination of Battle Group Kethmore," reported Commander Heejin Lee. "That leaves only Admiral Kethavar's flotilla and the refugee convoy near the Vega system." "And the planet killers?" Captain Choi asked calmly. "All 47 devices are in position around the remaining Imperial worlds, awaiting your orders." Captain Choi nodded slowly. The planet killers were humanity's final card, massive kinetic weapons that had been slowly maneuvered into position over the past year. Each one was capable of cracking a planet's crust, turning entire worlds into molten slag. They were crude compared to Valtorian technology, but they were also completely undetectable until the moment of impact. "Not yet," she said. "First, we give them the same chance they gave us." Dr. Jiho Kang walked through the ruins of the Valtorian capital, stepping carefully over the debris that littered the streets. The once proud city was now a ghost town, its massive towers dark and empty. Most of the population had fled years ago when the first human attacks began. Those who remained lived in constant fear. He found Admiral Velkoth hiding in what used to be the Imperial Palace, now just another abandoned building. The old alien looked up with haunted eyes when Dr. Kang entered the room. "You," Velkoth whispered. "You were there when we made first contact. You advised us on human psychology. You told us they would surrender easily." Dr. Kang sat down across from the former admiral, the man who had once been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "I told you what you wanted to hear," he said, simply. "Humans are very good at that." "Why?" Velkoth asked. "We could have coexisted. We could have found a peaceful solution." "You gave us 72 hours to become your slaves," Dr. Kang replied. "Did you expect us to be grateful?" The transmission reached Admiral Kethvar while his fleet was desperately trying to reach the edge of known space. The same calm voice that had refused their surrender ultimatum so many months ago now spoke to them from every screen on every surviving ship. "Admiral Kethvar," said Captain Suyong Choi, appearing on the main display. "I am Captain Choi of the Earth Defense Force. We need to talk." Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers stared back at him with desperate eyes. They had nowhere left to run, no allies to call for help, no hope of victory. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "The same thing you wanted from us," Captain Choi replied. "Surrender." The screen split to show tactical displays of the remaining Valtorian worlds. Each one had a countdown timer floating above it, all showing the same number, 72 hours. "You see those timers," Captain Choi continued. "Each one represents a planet killer positioned above your remaining worlds, kinetic weapons that will impact at precisely the time shown, unless, of course, you agree to our terms." Admiral Kethvar felt his heart sink. The humans weren't just offering surrender. They were offering the exact same terms the Empire had offered Earth. 72 hours to decide between slavery and extinction. "Your terms?" he asked, though he already knew what. They would be complete withdrawal from all human territory, establishment of a 200 light-year demilitarized zone around human space, formal recognition of human sovereignty over all systems we claim, and full reparations for the damage caused by your invasion. And if we refuse, Captain Choi's expression didn't change. Then in 72 hours, every remaining world in your empire becomes a molten ball of rock, just like you planned to do to Earth. The silence on the bridge stretched for what felt like hours. Admiral Kethvar thought about the millions of Valtorians still alive on those worlds, civilians who had never wanted war with humanity, children who didn't even know what a human was. "I need time to consider," he said finally. "You have 72 hours, Captain Choi replied. "Same as you gave us." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in deadly quiet. Commander Jinwoo Kim watched from the observation deck of his ship as Admiral Kethvar's fleet tried to find a way out of their impossible situation. For 6 months, he had watched the systematic destruction of the Valtorian Empire. Ships vanishing without a trace, worlds going silent, an entire civilization being methodically erased by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. "Sir," Lieutenant Minji Park said softly, "do you think they'll surrender?" Jinwoo considered the question. The Valtorians were proud, arrogant beings who had never known defeat. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, believing themselves superior to every other species they encountered. "They don't have a choice," he said finally. "Just like they thought we didn't have a choice." The countdown timers kept ticking. 71 hours, 59 minutes, 37 seconds, until the remaining Valtorian worlds would be reduced to cosmic dust. Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and thought about the choice he had to make. Save his people by surrendering to the species he had once planned to enslave, or watch them all die in a final act of pointless defiance. When he opened his eyes, he knew what he had to do. The transmission went out on all frequencies, broadcast, to every corner of the galaxy. The once mighty Valtorian Empire, conqueror of 847 worlds, formally surrendered to the human species they had tried to destroy. "We accept your terms," Admiral Kethvar said, his voice breaking. "Please have mercy on our people." The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the hunters became the hunted, and the prey revealed themselves to be the most patient predators the universe had ever seen. Humanity had won not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through something far more dangerous, the ability to think beyond the moment, to plan for decades, and to never ever forget.